Welcome to the 17th module of the Applied Linguistics course of the E-Pathshala program in Linguistics of the UGC. This module is devoted to what is called CLT or Communicative Language Teaching, theoretically rooted in very sound foundations and was popular for a very long time and is still being used extensively by a large number of teachers in one form or the other. But the fundamental principles and the fundamental implications of the communicative language teaching are here to stay uh, in different forms. Even when people say that uh, we should have an eclectic method, we should have in the post method era, it should be left to the teacher. We should keep the individual trajectories of children in mind, and we should uh, you know use the diversity among children as a classroom, in the classroom as a resource. All these Among all those things, the communicative approach uh, holds its own position, and its implications will often be uh, taken into consideration by teacher trainers, by language teachers, and people who try to weave the networks between linguistic theory, applied linguistics, and language teaching. The we owe the beginnings of this approach in some sense to sociolinguistics, of the communicative approach to language teaching, and within sociolinguistics to in some sense probably the best or the greatest sociolinguist of our times, the finest sociolinguist of our times, a person called Delheims at the University of Pennsylvania. Delheims, in some sense, in a response to Noam Chomsky's concept of linguistic competence, because you see, if you remember, Chomsky gave this concept of linguistic competence, by which he suggested that there may be all kinds of cognitive abilities with which we are born, but distinct, unique, and separate from all those cognitive abilities is the faculty of language. It's unique to human beings. Delheim said that we don't just have linguistic competence in our language. From the universal linguistic competence, we come to the linguistic competence in our own language. Delheim's position was that in our own language, and if we learn another language, what we need to evolve, what we need to develop, and what a child actually acquires is not linguistic competence but communicative competence. And the communicative competence Delheims defined as the kind of competence that you have to use not only grammatically correct, lexically appropriate, fluent speech, but also socially acceptable and socially appropriate language according to the context of situation. You may be saying the same thing. You may be sort of wishing, for example. You may just be saying good morning, or you may be saying namaste, or you may be saying pranam, or whatever. Uh, it depends on the context. It depends who you are addressing and how you will talk. And uh, consider, for example, the case of the second person pronoun in the Hindi language and in its various varieties. Uh, you will notice that in Hindi we don't have just the English you, but we have two tum and up, very complex. To acquire the competence of using tu, tum, and up is not an ordinary job. Is used either for lowly people or for domestic servants or for people you're fighting with, or people you're very, very intimate with your very, very intimate close friends. In many families, you are trained to address even your friends as up. But generally, you can use tu with them, which is sort of the lowest form of you. But tu is at the same time used for uh, your mother or for God, the God you worship. You can use tu for them also. So communicative competence, similarly tum and up, their variation is large, but there are uh, contextually sensitive rules defining how these terms will be used. So what we need in order to behave in society is not just linguistic competence, but also communicative competence. And this was the major limitation of all the earlier methods, from the grammar translation method to the direct method to the audiolingual method. They did not provide you any communicative competence to be productive. Delheim sort of argued that language fulfills a variety of functions. It's not just that language is grammatical, but it has to be used to receive and give information. You use language for giving orders or for making requests, or you use language for describing objects and for uh, expressing ideas, your opinions or feelings or needs. And you need language if you want to indicate time and location and action, and if you want to indicate what's your intention, it has to be indicated. Your language will always indicate, the use of your language will indicate what's your communicative intention. All these are different functions of communicative competence. So the aim of language teaching, according to Delheims and people who then followed Delheims, argued that what we require is not just linguistic competence, but we require socially sensitive communicative competence. So the focus of classroom activities was not on words or on sentences or on drills. The focus was on something, on chunks of language that would interest learners, and it was woven around topics like family, friends, social, and cultural events. Some of the books, for example, based on the communicative approach to some extent, would organize their books around certain themes. You would have theme of environment, or let's say sports, cultural activities, travel and tourism, humor, or bravery or something like that. They will have themes, and within the themes they will have different lessons. And from that, you build a communicative competence in each one of those themes. Uh, the activities again were not behaviorist activities of giving a pattern and doing what I have been calling PPMM. It was not that. It was not substitution. It was problem solving activities and function based exercises, such as inviting somebody to a party, engaging in a dialogue at the airport or the railway station, requesting information, asking for clarification, and requesting something, asking somebody to give you something or tell you the way, and then how do you express gratitude and how do you thank people. So there, when you talk of the when you talk of CLT, or the communicative language teaching method, one is often struck by the debate that has been going on between fluency and accuracy. In fact, this debate has overshadowed, has sort of has cast a shadow across all methods of language teaching. But in the communicative approach, the debate is about whether you should be fluent or you should be accurate or you should be both, or what should be the trade-off. Should you not worry too much about accuracy and make the child fluent, or should you worry too much about accuracy and you know not worry, make the child so fluent? Communicative language teaching does not abandon either of them. It says that let us first focus on fluency. Let us break the hesitation. Let us break the ice. So the first requirement is that the children should not be quiet. They should not be silent. They should speak up. Okay, it doesn't matter which language, but they should speak up. And once the fluency levels are achieved, then grammatical accuracy, lexical enrichment, and lexical appropriateness will take care of itself. And CLT, that means communicative language teaching, because it involved a whole range of communicative activities, had to be across the curriculum. It could not remain focused just on the language class. It had to be spread across. Alan worked quite a lot on the communicative method of language teaching, and he said that communicative competence has broadly three aspects, three major aspects. And these three aspects include the structural, the functional, and the experiential. So the structural aspect is large. So these are not isolated. These are integrated, these aspects. So communicative competence will consist of fluency and accuracy both after a certain point of time. It will consist of control over all the structures of the language and the major part of the lexicon. It will consist of being able to socially appropriately fulfill all the functions, and it will provide suitable experiences to the learner and to the teacher and to the peer group. One of the important aspects of the communicative approach was that it insisted on authentic texts and authentic situations, things that really happen, language that really takes place, rather than crafted poems and crafted stories. uh, Language of the real world, language in the real world, as we really talk about language. So the classroom language teaching learning situation was linked to the real life situations, and authentic samples of language and discourse, or contextualized chunks rather than discrete items, whether they were a list of words or a list of sentences, was kept away. The total discourse and authentic samples of that kind of discourse were brought into the classroom. And the target was to prepare students to be able to negotiate new communicative encounters, not repetitive, not that they have already experienced, but a communicative encounter which they have not experienced before, and that is how the experiential component was built on in the classroom or outside the classroom. Richard and Rogers, their book in 2001 on the communicative aspects of language teaching, they talked about three main principles of communicative method. They talked of the communication principle, which we have already discussed, and the meaningfulness principle, the authentic text principle, the authentic dialogue principle, which has meaning, and the task principle. What would be the tasks that would implicate? They should not be artificial. They should not be. What was the implications? of this kind of approach is on your screen. You can see on your screen, yeah, that the slide is there, and I'm going to explain or sort of read out these implications for you. That the real communication should be the focus of language learning, opportunities for learners to experiment more and more rather than just repeat and drill, and consider errors as stages in the process of learning, as as in a child who is trying to build communicative competence. Opportunities for learners to develop both accuracy and fluency, getting rid of special focus on different skills. So there is no division between LSRW. I think this was a major breakthrough in the communicative approach, that for the first time it made people believe that language is not cut into discrete skills, it is a whole. In the CLT, there was a holistic approach to language teaching, and students would discover the rules of language themselves. The implications for classroom transactions: there must be peer group learning and materials which are informal and formally produced, but they must be authentic. And the role of the teacher is not as a dictator. The role of the teacher is not to teach, but the role of the teacher is to facilitate communicative dialogue in the classroom. And children should be allowed to follow their individual trajectories, and you don't have to separate assessment. I think these are crucial things of CLT. You don't have to separate assessment from the process of learning. Assessment could become a part of the learning if the teacher could figure out whether the child is able to negotiate a fresh communicative encounter successfully. So I think a communicative approach to language teaching gave us, several insights into language learning and language acquisition, from which followed a whole series of implications for classroom transactions. And these implications have stayed with us in spite of lot of other things happening in the field of language teaching. So we will keep these things in mind as we move on to the other modules of this course in applied linguistics.